بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا وإمامنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Tonight's lesson بإذن الله تعالى will be on Lu'lu Marjan فيما اتفق عليه الشيخان. And we have remained, or we're still in the book of Manumission, Kitab al-Itq, the book of the rulings and the regulations of freeing a slave. Last week we explained the prohibition of a person abusing and discarding wala. And that's going to be tonight's discussion as well. And the word wala meaning allegiance, fealty, ascription. A person is attributed to this tribe or this clan. Someone frees a slave. That slave is now free, but there is an ascription and an attachment that they have to the one who freed him or her. And that wala, that attachment, whether it's with your name, your tribe, the ascription, inheritance, an oath to fight, to support them, if and when they go to war, etc. It cannot be sold, nor can it be gifted, but it only belongs to the one who obtained freedom for the slave by freeing them. We explained that last week. We're also mentioning some more introductory points with regards to slavery and the history of the human race, inside and outside of Islam, and how many people have a great amount of misconceptions and errors concerning the real history of slavery at whole, at large. And most people who speak about it are hypocritical, and they have an agenda, and they pick and choose. They cherry pick what they wish to discuss with regards to slavery. And unfortunately, many Muslims aren't free from that. Unfortunately, many Muslims, they are scared or terrified or embarrassed at different parts of history, regardless of their race, where they come from. They support a new movement, a new agenda, right? When they were trying to assassinate, right, their leader, some of his top generals, they met up. And one of the generals was disgusted at the idea of assassinating our leader and running a coup d'etat, and getting rid of him and making peace with the allies. We have to end the war. The war is a lost cause. Our leader is a lunatic. He's crazy. He's lost his mind. We have to get rid of him. That way we can have better bargaining before the war comes to those people having them dictating all of the conditions to us. So as the general, the colonel, the field marshal, as he walked off and his stomach was upset, just the thought of betraying his leader, betraying the person that he gave his oath of allegiance to. He said, look, we got to do this. There's no choice. We have no choice. And then he asked the question. He says, I wonder, would we be talking about this if we were winning the war? And plotting the assassination of our leader if we were what? If we were winning. The highlighting point from this story is what? Is that when a person is winning, when a person is superior, when a person is dominant, his mindset is very different. And the mindset of many Muslims today is weak, is inferior. I've migrated to this country, I left my lands, I've adopted this culture, adopted this language. So how they look at things are going to be very different. And from that is slavery. It's ugly, it's terrifying, it's embarrassing because you're low. But I wonder, would you feel the same about slavery if you were what? If you were on top. Everybody get the moral of the story? I wonder, would it be such a difficult thing to talk about if the non-Muslims were migrating and asking for permission and protection to come into the lands of the Muslims? So we can never, ever forget this when we talk about slavery, when we talk about jihad, when we talk about all of these different issues, right? Is that the Muslims, most of us today are living in a state of mental, physical, spiritual weakness and inferiority. And that has an effect upon our interpretation of Quran and Sunnah and us being apologetic Muslims. Everyone understand this? Winners don't apologize. Rarely does a winner apologize. Rarely does the conqueror apologize. Rarely. While he's in the state of conquering, right? And even with reparations that the different countries have paid to the different nations and races that they trampled upon and stomped upon and enslaved and raped and plundered, even with their reparations and some of their apologies that they give and so on and so forth, they don't apologize for everything. And they still hold a great amount of pride in their rich past. It's a fact. Spain, right? Portugal. May, give a little this, say this was wrong, this was messed up. But the museums, right? The gold and the silver, all of those things taken from those lands is still what? Still remains. They're not going to apologize for everything, right? So that's with regards to discussing these issues in these matters. As I just said, he said, I wonder would we talking like this if we were what? If we were winning the war. What would we calling our leader a lunatic? We didn't know he was a lunatic in the beginning? You didn't know he was crazy? You didn't know that his movement was not making any sense? But victory after victory after victory after victory, we let it go. Now those victories, they start running dry. And the blunders really start manifesting themselves. And the replacement of professional military decisions with this divine intuition of this leader, now the generals and the colonels and the marshals are fed up with it, but only because they started losing. All right? Okay, so never ever forget that with regards to the history of slavery. Khayr inshallah ta'ala. So the next chapter, chapter number 4, it says, Babu tahrimi tawalli al-atiq ghayra mawalihi. حديث علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله عنه أنه خطب على منبر من آجر وعليه سيف فيه صحيفة معلقة فقال والله ما عندنا من كتاب يقرأ إلا كتاب الله وما في هذه الصحيفة فنشرها فإذا فيها أسنان الإبل وإذا فيها المدينة هرم من عير إلى كذا فمن أحدث فيها حدثا فعليه لعنة الله والملائكة والناس أجمعين لا يقبل الله منه صرفا ولا عدلا وإذا فيه ذمة المسلمين واحدة يسعى بها أدناهم فمن أخفر مسلما فعليه لعنة الله والملائكة والناس أجمعين لا يقبل الله منه صرفا ولا عدلا وإذا فيها من والى قوما بغير إذن مواليه فعليه لعنة الله والملائكة والناس أجمعين لا يقبل الله منه صرفا ولا عدلا. Chapter 4 states, it is forbidden for a freed slave to take masters other than his real masters who manumitted him. And obviously there are problems in this translation. If he's a freed slave, then he no longer has masters. He's freed. So the word mawla, and obviously the plural mawali, has many meanings and usages in the Arabic language. And it's a very interesting and paradoxical word in Arabic language. The word mawla can mean a slave. And the word mawla can mean a master. And the word mawla can mean a freed slave. And the word mawla obviously can mean someone's protector. نعم المولى ونعم النصير, as Allah says in the Quran. أنت مولانا نعم فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. Right? So the word mawla has different usages. So this chapter heading says mawalihi, in other words, those who freed him. And they're no longer his what? His masters. Rather, it's not a condition that they were his masters from the get-go. Someone could have purchased a slave. He needs to be free. He doesn't need to be a slave anymore. How much does it cost? And he was never ever his what? His master. So the word mawali means those who what? Manumitted him. Whoever they were. Whether it was the one who owned him or the one who? Al-Muhim, the one who purchased him. The one who gave him his manumission. Alright? So therefore, it is unlawful. Tahrim. It is unlawful. To what extent is it unlawful? Is it a major sin? Is it a minor sin? For sure, the chapter heading says tahrim. It is unlawful for a freed slave to attribute him or herself to other than the ones who freed him. I.e., a man from Queens, New York, manumitted me. and now I ascribe myself to someone from Brooklyn, right? The Brooklyn brother didn't what? He didn't free me, but instead someone from Queens. I said, I'm from Brooklyn. I'm representing Brooklyn. Brooklyn in the house. I'm Brooklyn. I'm Brooklyn. I'm Brooklyn. I'm Brooklyn. That is unfair. That's disrespectful to what? Who's from? Who's from? Everyone understand this? So therefore, he isn't allowed to ascribe himself to other than those who freed him. I would understand this. When I first came to New York, the brothers from Queens, they put me down. They did this. They took me by the hand. Blah blah. They took me in, etc. But now I'm not claiming Queens. I'm claiming, Staten Island, right? Or right? You say la, that's disrespectful, right? And the concept of dignity, right? Basic human dignity and decency, and the same applies to a student, right? Brother teaches you, takes you by the hand, helps you out, and then later on you grow big, you grow strong. He said, I never studied with him. He just, showed me a few things. He opened up a book and that was it. You get the point I'm trying to make? There's many things that are applicable to this. So therefore it is unlawful from the rulings of manumission is that it is unlawful for a freed slave to attribute himself to other than those who freed him. End of discussion. Now, from the dynamics or from the depths of this chapter and this ruling is that which many brothers and sisters talk about today regarding last names. When a brother accepts Islam, is it lawful? Is it permissible? Is it obligatory? Is it recommended for him or her to change their names and to change their last names? Some, obviously, we know they'll say, of course you change your name. You're not a Muslim. You've now reverted, converted or reverted, whatever word you wish to use. You have changed your lifestyle and you have to change your identity. Don't call me Cassius Clay. That's disrespectful. My name is officially Muhammad Ali. End of discussion. There's no such thing as Cassius Clay anymore. I'm a new person. You understand this? Ali is his last name. Muhammad is his first name, right? Even though most people is very interested in whenever they would speak about him, they would call him what? No. They'll call him what? They'll call him Ali. That's a fact. Is this not the case? If you look at the old fights, they would always call him what? Ali. Ali's knocks him out. Ali did it. Ali, right? And they call him Ali or Muhammad Ali. But never, ever will they call him by his what? First name. Isn't that interesting? You ever heard him? You ever heard an announcer? You ever heard anybody saying Muhammad won, Muhammad knocked him out? No. Never. It's either Muhammad Ali or Ali. Who's the greatest? Ali. The name of the movie, Ali. You get it or not? So therefore, Clay, the name Clay, where does that name come from? Clay obviously was his family last name, but where does it really come from? Is Clay a name that comes from Ireland or Scotland or England? Where does that name come from? And why and how did his ancestors get the last name Clay? So is it lawful for him now to change his name and to eradicate that ascription or lineage, and his last name is now Ali? I don't understand this because he accepted Islam. Some brothers will say, yes, it's permissible, it's obligatory, you have to give yourself an Islamic identity. And other brothers may say that's haram because he's doing away with his lineage. He's changing his family name, and somewhere down the line, in most cases, the last person to own this ancestor, grandfather, great-grandfather, this master, his last name was? Clay. I don't understand this. So this is a very important question here in the United States. Where do last names come from in the United States for people? Whether you're black or white. Johnson, the son of John. What is it? If you have Scottish lineage or Irish lineage or English lineage or Russian lineage, and you have a last name, where does it come from? It's a big possibility that it comes from slavery, serfdom, or feudal lord that owned your land, so on and so forth. All right. So is it lawful to change your last name? And with regards to Black Americans or African Americans specifically, is it accurate to say that you can't change your last name because you're attributing yourself to other than those who freed you? Did Jefferson or Johnson, did that person free me? Or did Abraham Lincoln free me? Everyone understand this? So many people, brothers, they get confused. Did the clay plantation say, here you go? Or was the clay plantation forced to say, you gotta go? Everybody understand this? Tell you. All right. That's a discussion in itself. Many people, they get this confused. And of course, there's more things to discuss regarding the last names. Some people say, I'm not getting an Arab last name. Islam isn't Arabs. I want an African last name. I come from West Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. That's the identity that I want to keep. All right? Khairan, inshallah. So, hadith number 963. It said that Ali radiallahu anhu narrated Ibrahim at-Taymi that Ali addressed us while he was standing on a brick pulpit and carrying a sword on the minbar. Ali was what? On the minbar holding a sword, from which was hanging a scroll. He had a scroll wrapped up, tied up, fastened to his sword. He said, by Allah, we have no book to read except Allah's book and whatever is on this scroll. And then he unrolled it, and behold, in it was written what sort of camels were to be given as blood money. And there was also written in it, Al-Medina is a sanctuary, from Ma'ayr to such and such a place. So whoever innovates in the hearsay or commits a sin therein, he will incur the curse of Allah, the angels, and all of the people. And Allah will not accept his compulsory or optional good deeds. There was also written in it, the asylum granted by any Muslim is one and the same. Is to be secured and respected by all the other Muslims. And whoever betrays a Muslim in this respect will incur the curse of Allah, the angels, and all the people. And Allah will not accept his compulsory or optional good deeds. And there was also written on it, whoever takes masters other than his real masters without their permission will incur the curse of Allah, the angels, and all the people. And Allah will not accept his compulsory or optional good deeds. So, the gist of this hadith, one of the Salaf Salih, one of the Tabi'een, he was sitting down or standing up, listening to Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu give a khutbah, a sermon. Whether it was Jum'ah or whether it was another day, he was addressing the people. And he swore on the minbar, holding the sword, Wallahi, he says, I swear by Allah, there's no document that we have, there's nothing to read except for the Quran, the Mus'haf, and what's in this scroll. And obviously Ali radiallahu anhu, he was swearing either based off of, in most cases, or based off of his knowledge. And if that's not the case, then there were many other companions who had what? Scrolls from the Prophet. The hadiths that were written down. So Ali radiallahu anhu is either speaking about what he knows confidently, or he's speaking about yani in most cases. Okay? And obviously this hadith clearly shows that there were hadiths written down not 200 years after the Prophet's death, as ignorant fools claim, and get more ignorant, foolish Muslims to believe that, which is total nonsense, makes no sense. For 200 years, the Muslims never wrote down anything the Prophet said. 200 years, 2 centuries, the Muslims didn't write down one single word or sentence of the man that they claim to love the most. Does that make any sense? And you hear somebody saying some stupid stuff like this in a university, and somebody blindly following them. I only follow the Quran. I only follow the Holy Quran because hadiths were written down 200 years. Really? 200 years? You know how long of a time that is? In our society, do people neglect and ignore the statements of somebody that they claim to love more than anyone for 200 years? So forget the scientific rebuttal of that statement, but that doesn't even what? Doesn't even make sense. But the average person isn't using his common sense. So therefore, this clearly proves is that hadiths were written down before 200 years had passed by. Moving forward, فَنَشَرَهَا. So he opened the scroll, or like this, right? He opened it up. فَإِذَا فِيهَا. And behold, all of a sudden, this was the information in this scroll. Number 1, فِيهَا أَسْنَانُ الْإِبِلِ. The ages of the camels, i.e. a diya. The ruling Kitab al-Diyat. A Muslim fights another Muslim and he pokes out his eye. Or a Muslim gets into a fight and he injures the Muslim's finger and his finger is taken off. Okay? Or he accidentally killed him. Manslaughter. Second degree, third degree, right? Homicide, so on and so forth, right? What is to be done with regards to retribution? How much has to be paid? In which the people have the option, life for life, forgiveness, or accepting the blood money, right? How many camels are paid? How much money is paid, right? With regards to these offenses. And subhanAllah, the scholars of Islam, to show you the importance of the beard, something that so many Muslims neglect and ignore. And even doctors today say it's not haram, it's nothing, it's Arab culture. Read what the scholars say about someone who does something to a man's beard. If you messed up someone's beard and it didn't grow back, you put some balm on it or something and you burnt it, and you messed it up, you messed his skin up, his face up, read how much you have to pay for destroying a person's beard. You'd be shocked. The blood money that is given for destroying someone's beard. What's important is in Islam, there is a thing called blood money. Diya. Money that is to be paid to a person or a person's family with regards to a violation of a part of their body, if not taking their life. Everyone understand this? Let alone eye for eye, life for life. Naam. Inshallah all ta'ala. All right, so that was written down in this scroll. And also, it said in this scroll, Al-Madinatu haramun min ayrin ila kadha. Is that the city of Medina is like the city of Mecca. It's sacred. It's a haram. There are people who can and cannot enter and exit. There are people, or there are different deeds and acts that cannot be done inside of Medina. Just like Mecca. And these were the borders. This mountain to that mountain. The hadith then states, فَمَنْ أَحْدَثَ فِيهَا حَدَثًا. So whoever makes a hadith, which means a major sin, a major crime, or makes an innovation, an hearsay, and brings about an innovation, فَعَلَيْهِ لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ. Then he will be cursed by Allah, by the angels, and by all of people. And as a further punishment, Allah will not accept any deeds from this person. Moving forward, and this goes to show the virtue of Medina and the danger of disrespecting the Prophet ﷺ's city. Then he goes on to speak on ذِمَّةُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَاحِدَةٌ, with regards to giving someone asylum, giving someone a contract, giving someone a promise of peace and safety, and how the Muslims are equal in this. Right? The details of that we're not going to discuss right now. The highlighting point from the hadith states, مَنْ وَالَى قَوْمًا بِغَيْرِ إِذْنِ مِوَالِيهِ, is whoever ascribes himself to other than those who manumitted him, then etc., etc., etc. The curse of Allah will be upon him, the angels, the people, and Allah will not accept any deeds, optional or compulsory. That's the highlighting point from the hadith. Is that a slave who is freed, he's no longer a slave, he now ascribes himself to other than those who freed him, this is the sin that he will receive. Everybody understand this? And obviously this hadith proves that this is a major sin, whereas the word curse was involved. It's from the kaba'ir. Alright, moving forward. An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says regarding this, فَقَدْ احْتَجَ بِهِ قَوْمٌ عَلَى جَوَازِ التَّوَلِّي بِإِذْنِ مُوَالِيهِ والصحيح الذي عليه الجمهور أنه لا يجوز وإن أذنوا كما لا يجوز الانتساب إلى غير أبيه وإن أذن أبوه فيه وحمل التقييد في الحديث على الغالب لأن غالب ما يقع هذا بغير إذن الموالي. He says there are some scholars who say is that it is lawful for a freed slave to attribute himself to other than those who freed him if they allow. If the manumitters what? Allow it. Whereas the hadith clearly says, بِغَيْرِ إِذْنِ. So some scholars, they say that that word, idhn, means something. So if the person allows it, then it's no problem. No, he says, the correct view that most scholars adopt is that it is unlawful even if they permit, even if they allow it. That's Nawawi's opinion. Just as he makes an example of this, it's unlawful for a person to attribute himself to other than his father, even if his father permits it. So that can't be done, period. Now, what does this part of the hadith mean then? That has to mean something, right? These scholars, they interpret it to mean in most cases, i.e., most of the cases or most of the time, those people will not allow it. So therefore, in most cases, they just mention it like that. But it doesn't mean, he says, is that even if they allow it, it's lawful. But in most cases, people, they don't allow it, period. All right. And he says, and there are examples of this in the Quran with regards to a man marrying his stepdaughter that lives with him. And what the scholars of Islam say regarding this, that the stepdaughter is unlawful, whether she lives in your home or not. But in most cases, you marry a woman with a daughter, she's going to. Also, another example of this is the prohibition of killing your children out of fear of poverty. I.e., in most cases, people, they kill their children because of what? Doesn't mean it's lawful to kill your children if you don't fear poverty. Understand? They're saying in most cases, there's no mafhum of even. Everyone understand this? All right, moving forward. Except that's a very good qaida for a student of knowledge to understand with regards to comparative fiqh. What's meant by the term la mafhuma lahu. La mafhuma lahu. This condition, this stipulation isn't regarded. But in most cases, that's how it is. And it doesn't mean that it's lawful even if that's not the case. Naam. All right, moving forward. Qawluhu. Khairan. All right, what are some of the fawaid of this previously mentioned hadith? First and foremost, this hadith shows us the virtue of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And this goes to show the combining between pen and sword. Ali radiallahu anhu as a warrior and Ali as a scholar. He had the sword, and subhanAllah, not only did he have the scroll, but the scroll was tied to the what? To the sword. So it's even greater now, showing you that there's no such thing as is the pen mightier than the sword. But the sword is the pen and the pen is the sword. They go hand what? Hand in hand, right? And this is one of the main concepts of HadithDisciple. No doubt about that. The sword and the pen go hand in hand. The East and the West go what? Hand in hand. The old and the new go what? Hand in hand. The elegant and the gritty go what? Hand in hand. With the proper balance, the proper tweaking, they're one. Everyone understand this? So Ali radiallahu anhu, he gave the khutbah, he had the sword, and the sword was holding the scroll. Right? Everyone understand this? So this shows us Ali radiallahu anhu as a scholar and as a warrior. Alright, moving forward. This also goes to show as how the leaders of the past, they would give the khutbah. They would speak to the people. And many people today who talk about the governments, you have to listen, you have to obey, you have to follow, you can't make khuruj, blah, 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 blah. Right? They say these different things. And all those things are wrong. Rather, that's the sunnah, to listen to the Islamic ruler. There is no question about that. There's no what? Question about you're supposed to obey the Islamic ruler unless he tells you to do haram. You're supposed to follow the Islamic ruler. There's no doubt about that. However, for a person to want everything to be applicable, but not demand the other things to be applicable. And from that is that the Islamic ruler that you're reading in these ayats and these hadith and these athar was an actual what? Islamic, not Muslim. And I'm not even talking about kafir or not. That's a different discussion. Takfir, and I don't have to bring that up. But we said Islamic. This person is the Islamic what? Ruler. When's the last time, and obviously we don't talk about this stuff, takfir and khuruj, the stuff that the people waste so much time speaking about on the internet and YouTube, fighting, going back and forth. And I'm not talking about nobody specifically, people who have no knowledge, people that can barely speak Arabic, digging and discussing and talking about these issues. Is really a sad state of affair. What's important is, have you ever been to a country, Sajid, and seen the supposed Islamic ruler give the khutbah? Have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen that on TV? In all of the Muslim, Middle Eastern, whatever countries, have you ever seen it one time? You ever seen it? You ever seen them lead Salat? You ever seen them lead Hajj? So the moral of the story is, it's not to incite people to make khuruj. No. But I'm trying to make a point here. Is that the rulers back then, they did these things. And these were necessary things for the ruler. He had to be knowledgeable. He had to be learned. And he had to be brave. Even the non-Muslims had these conditions back then. For this person to be the emperor, for this person to be the king, it had to be proven that he was on the battlefield, on the horse, and then he mixed it up and he fought bravely. And a coward could not sit upon the throne. End of discussion. The people wouldn't follow him. Nowadays, things are what? Extremely different in many aspects. But the people who go gung-ho, they want all of the rulings in favor of this ruler to be the what? The same. But the conditions, the requirements, the characteristics aren't what? You get the point I'm trying to make? The people are trying to force something into a spot that is clearly of a different shape. It's a mushkila. I'm not doing nothing for my wife. I'm not paying no bills. I'm not giving you no time. I'm not doing anything for you. But all of my rights as a husband, obey me, follow me, give me my rights of intimacy, etc., etc., etc. I want what? Will that work? Intellectually. Aqli and yani. It won't work, right? And this is exactly what happens today. The ruler. But then when someone says, well, the ruler said this about the Quran, oh, be quiet. Don't talk about that. You can't be taking the scholastics seriously. You can't be talking about these issues ilmiyan seriously without getting people to laugh at you. I mean, understand the point? So therefore, Ali radiallahu anhu, he gave the khutbah to the people. He was the leader in front of the people. He had the sword, symbolic, in front of the what? In front of the people. And he spread the sunnah and he told the rulings to the people. Right? It wasn't a secular ruler. Moving forward. And it says, the hadith, it goes show the virtue of Ali. Hadiths were written down before 200 years, before Imam al-Bukhari. Medina is sacred. This hadith affirms diya and diyat. And this affirms the impermissibility of sin in Medina and the impermissibility of making and creating hearsays in Medina. And how there will be people who are still Muslim whose deeds won't be accepted from them for one reason or another. Khairin inshallah ta'ala. The last chapter states, Babu Fadl al-Itqi. أو باب فضل العتق حديث أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أيما رجل أعتق امرأ مسلما استنقذ الله بكل عضو منه من النار. The superiority of manumission. Hadith 964 is narrated Abu Hurairah رضي الله عنه. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, whoever manumits a Muslim slave, Allah will save all the parts of his body from the fire as he has manumitted the body parts of the slave. We explained this hadith in the beginning of the chapter, and we explained how Islam supports and encourages manumission of slaves. And Islam doesn't come to enslave people just for the fun or the heck of it, just to make somebody a slave. Islam doesn't come and support killing people just for the what? Just for the fun of it. That's not Islam. However, Islam is sent down by the one who created man, and the one who knows man better than man knows himself. And this creator knows certain things that the human beings, men, are going to do. And from that, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be wars. There's going to be fighting. And if there is fighting and wars, then there has to be, etc., 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 etc. Islam embraces the reality of life. And Islam does not create this bubble of fantasy that people want religion and life to be. I mean, understand this. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect us from that. So the excellence and the superiority of manumitting a slave. An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says here, regarding this chapter, وفي هذا الحديث بيان فضل العتق وأنه من أفضل الأعمال ومما يحصل به العتق من النار ودخول الجنة وفي استحباب عتق كامل الأعضاء فلا يكون خصيا ولا فاقد غيره من أعضائه. وفي الخصي وغيره أيضا الفضل العظيم، لكن الكامل أولى وأفضله أعلاه ثمنا وأنفسه، كما سبق بيانه في أول الكتاب في كتاب الإيمان في حديث أي الرقاب أفضل. وقد روى أبو داود والترمذي والنسائي وغيرهم عن سالم بن الجعد عن أبي أمامة وغيره من الصحابة رضي الله عنهم إلى آخره. So there are many different issues presented in this hadith with regards to the superiority of manumission and what slaves are best to be freed, okay, and a person offering his best to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The last chapter in Sahih Muslim, it's not in Bukhari, in Muslim, we finished that chapter, that book, is Fadlu Itq al-Walidi, is the superiority of freeing your father or mother who could be a slave. The virtue for the child to manumit his parents. If and when a child happened to find his parents who were enslaved, he frees them. And that is the only way that the child could truly pay back his mother or father. You can't pay back your mother or father unless you happen to do that. That's not in Bukhari, in Muslim. That's just in Sahih Muslim. The next book, the next kitab, it says Kitabul Buyur, the book of sales. The book of sales. Inshallah ta'ala, in next week's class, we will start this new book. It's the 21st book of the book, the 21st chapter of the book. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa iyyakum.